There is a moment, right on the edge of waking, that most people pass through too quickly to notice. The dream is still there. A city that doesn't exist, a conversation with someone you haven't seen in years, a feeling of dread or wonder that you can't quite name, and then the room comes back. The ceiling, the weight of the blanket, the pale light around the curtains. Something in you settles and says, okay, this is real now. And you believe it. Without hesitation, without proof, without asking why. You just believe it. But here is what nobody mentions in that moment. The brain that spent the night building worlds out of nothing. Cities, people, gravity, fear, love, consequence. That brain did not stop when you woke up. It kept going. It kept generating. It kept constructing a version of the room, a version of the morning, a version of you, and handing it to your consciousness as though it was simply the truth. Neuroscience is beginning to ask a question that is genuinely difficult to sit with. What if waking reality is not the opposite of dreaming? What if it is the version of dreaming that the brain has learned to stabilize, constrained, refined, anchored to the outside world, but constructed in the same way, by the same machinery, using the same fundamental process? Not a metaphor, not a spiritual claim, a biological one. Tonight we are not asking whether dreams are real. We are asking something worse. We are asking whether waking life feels real for the same reason that dreams feel real. Because the brain is very, very good at building worlds and then convincing the thing living inside them that there is nothing else. Get comfortable. And if this is your first time here, subscribe to Novarium, because tonight we are going inside the machinery that makes reality feel real. There is something that happens in the first few seconds after a vivid dream that I keep coming back to. Not the dream itself, but what follows it. You're not quite sure which way is out. The dream hasn't dissolved yet. It's still there. Fully dimensional, emotionally weighted, and for a second or two, both versions of reality are running at the same time. The dream world and the waking world overlap, and you don't immediately know which one to trust. Most people dismiss that moment the instant they feel the mattress beneath them. The dream collapses, the room wins, and then the morning begins and the question never comes up again. But what if that moment of overlap is actually the most honest moment of your day? What if the uncertainty you feel right on the edge of waking is not a confusion to be corrected, but a perception to be examined? Because here is what that moment reveals. Both states felt real. Both states were generated by the same brain. Both states arrived in your consciousness as experience, not as data, not as raw signals, not as electric noise, but as a world, fully formed, inhabited, emotionally present. The dream felt real because the brain built it as though it were real. The waking room feels real because the brain is building it, right now, as though it is real. And the uncomfortable question, the one this video is going to spend a long time sitting with, is whether those two situations are as different as we assume. The short answer, based on what neuroscience currently understands about perception, is that they are different, but not in the way you think. And the difference is more unsettling than the similarity. Let's start with something that seems almost too obvious to say. You do not see the world. You see what your brain thinks the world looks like. That sentence sounds like the kind of thing someone puts on a motivational poster, drained of everything interesting about it. But take it seriously for a moment, because it is not a vague, philosophical observation. It is a description of the actual mechanics of human perception, and those mechanics are strange. Light enters your eye and triggers photoreceptor cells in the retina. Those cells convert light into electrochemical signals. The signals travel along the optic nerve, get relayed through the thalamus, and arrive at the visual cortex at the back of the brain. What happens there, what the brain does with that information, is not playback. It is not recording. It is not a projection of the outside world onto an inner screen. It is construction. The brain takes those raw signals, essentially a stream of electrical data about light intensity and wavelength and motion, and builds an image. It applies context. It fills in gaps. It adds color, which does not exist as color in the physical world, but only as a property of how the brain interprets certain wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation. It resolves ambiguity, corrects for distortions, and assembles a seamless visual experience out of what is, at the source, a very incomplete set of inputs. Here is a simple example that has been taught in neuroscience for decades, but still stops people cold when they actually try it. You have a blind spot. Right now, as you look at anything, there is a region in each eye where the optic nerve connects to the retina, and that region has no photoreceptors. It cannot detect light at all. There is a hole in your vision, a real one, an anatomical hole present in every human eye, through which no visual information enters the brain. And yet you do not see a hole. You do not see a black patch, or a blur, or even a slight dimness. You see a complete, unbroken visual field, seamless from edge to edge. That is because your brain fills it in. It takes the surrounding visual information and extrapolates, constructs a section of the image that was never actually received, and presents the completed version to your consciousness as though it was simply what's there. Think about what that means. There is a region of reality you are not seeing, and your brain has replaced it with an educated guess. And the guess is so good, so seamlessly integrated, that you have never once in your life noticed the gap. That is not an anomaly. That is not a bug. That is the system working exactly as it is designed. The brain is not in the business of showing you raw data. It is in the business of presenting you with a coherent and useful model of the world, assembled from incomplete information, so that you can function inside it. And it does this constantly, for everything. Not just for the blind spot, for color, for distance, for the solidity of objects, for the continuity of space, for the sense that the room behind you still exists even when you're not looking at it. The brain fills in. The brain constructs. The brain builds the world as an act of ongoing inference, and it is so good at this that the construction is completely invisible. You walk through life feeling like you are receiving reality. What you are actually doing is living inside a very sophisticated model of it. This becomes harder to dismiss when you look at optical illusions, not as party tricks, but as diagnostic tests. When two identical shades of grey appear to be different colours because one is inside a pattern and one is outside it, that is not your eye making an error. That is your brain applying its construction rules and producing an output that does not match the physical input. The brain decided, based on context and prior expectation, what each patch of grey should look like, and it was wrong. And yet the wrongness feels indistinguishable from reality. When you see a face in the pattern of a curtain, or hear your name in the static of a fan, your brain is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it always does, generating the most likely interpretation of ambiguous data, and in those cases, the most likely interpretation happens to be incorrect. These are not edge cases. They are windows into a process that is running every moment of your waking life. The brain is always choosing. It is always interpreting. It is always applying a model to incoming signals and presenting the result as direct experience. And the crucial thing, the part that matters for everything that follows, is that you cannot feel this happening. You cannot sense the interpretation layered over the input. You cannot feel the construction taking place. All you get is the finished product, delivered to consciousness as a reality, with no indication of the machinery behind it. Neuroscientists have a framework for this now. It has been developed over the last few decades by researchers like Carl Friston, Andy Clark, Jacob Howe, and others, and it has become one of the most discussed ideas in cognitive neuroscience. It goes by several names: predictive processing, the prediction engine, active inference. The details vary, but the core idea is consistent enough to describe in plain terms. The brain is not a recording device. It is a prediction machine. At any given moment, the brain holds a model of the world, a structured set of predictions about what it should be receiving from its sensory systems. The visual cortex is not just receiving images from the eyes, it is generating predictions about what the eyes should be seeing and comparing those predictions against the incoming data. The auditory cortex is not just listening, it is anticipating, moment by moment, and checking whether reality matches the expectation. When the prediction is correct, nothing much happens. The model continues. The world feels stable. When the prediction is wrong, when something unexpected arrives, the brain receives what researchers call a prediction error, a signal that says the model needs updating, and the brain updates. It revises the prediction, incorporates the new information, and adjusts the model to better match what just happened. This sounds almost administrative when described that way, but the implications are profound. Because what it means is that perception is not primarily a bottom-up process, not primarily a matter of raw data flowing in and being processed. It is largely top-down. The brain starts with what it expects to find, projects that expectation onto incoming signals, and corrects the model only when the expectation fails. You are not, in other words, looking at the world. You are looking at your brain's prediction of the world, corrected by evidence. You are living inside a model that reality keeps forcing to update. There is a version of a metaphor here that I want to be careful with, because it's easy to oversimplify. Think of a sculptor working from the inside out, constantly reshaping clay based on feedback from the outside, but you never see the clay shaping process, only the finished surface. The surface feels like a direct view of reality. It is not. It is the current best guess of a system that is perpetually revising itself based on what it cannot afford to get wrong. This framework, perception as predictive modeling, is not universally accepted in every detail. It is a scientific hypothesis, still debated, still refined, but the basic observation it rests on is not controversial. The brain actively constructs perception rather than passively receiving it. That part is not disputed, and it matters enormously for what happens next. Now we can talk about dreams without changing the subject. When you fall asleep, the sensory input does not stop entirely. Your body is still there. The room is still there. Sounds still reach your ears. But the brain dramatically reduces the weight it gives to external sensory signals and dramatically increases the influence of internal prediction. The balance shifts. The correction mechanism loosens. The model starts running on its own, with much less constraint from the outside world. And when that happens, when the prediction engine keeps running but the sensory feedback that normally corrects it is heavily suppressed, you get a dream. A dream is not the brain doing something alien to its normal function. A dream is the brain doing what it always does, but with the doors mostly closed. The same prediction machinery, the same world construction process, the same assembly of visual space and emotional tone and social context and selfhood. But running on memory, expectation, fear, desire, and internal state rather than on anchored sensory data. This is the first major shift in how you might think about dreaming. The dream is not strange because the brain invented something new to do during sleep. The dream is revealing that the brain can construct full, immersive, convincing experience at all. That it has this capacity always, that it has been doing it all day, and that what you call waking reality is a version of this same construction held more firmly in place. The dream doesn't happen when the brain starts constructing. The dream happens when the brain stops being corrected. That is a different kind of disturbing. During REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming, something unusual happens to the brain's activity. The visual and emotional systems become highly active. The limbic system, which is involved in emotion, memory, and threat processing, shows intense engagement. The prefrontal cortex, which is associated with logical reasoning, critical evaluation, and the ability to recognize implausibility, becomes significantly less active than it is during waking. What this produces is a brain that is generating vivid, emotionally saturated, visually rich experience, while the part of the brain that might step back and say, "This doesn't make sense," is running at reduced capacity. which explains a great deal about what dreams feel like from the inside. In a dream, you can walk through a building and find yourself in a room that was not connected to the building you entered. You can have a conversation with someone who is simultaneously a stranger and a close friend. The sky can be green. The laws of physics can work inconsistently from one moment to the next, and you accept all of it without question, because the part of you that would normally flag these inconsistencies is quiet. The dream world is not coherent in the way waking reality is coherent, but it is emotionally coherent. The fear feels real, the love feels real, the urgency feels real, the meaning of events feels real. Because the systems that generate emotion and significance are fully active, while the systems that audit logical consistency are turned down. And this is why people wake from dreams with their hearts pounding, or with tears on their faces, or with a grief or joy that takes minutes to dissipate even after they understand where they are. The emotional content was generated by real systems. The brain was genuinely processing as though the events were happening. The body responded accordingly. The body does not know the difference between a dream and a threat unless the higher systems tell it. And during REM sleep, the higher systems are not fully online. So the body responds to the dream. That is not a malfunction. That is the reality engine running a very convincing simulation. There is something that happens to some people occasionally that brings all of this into a sharper and more uncomfortable focus. You fall asleep. At some point, something shifts and you become aware that you are in a dream, not waking up from it, but gaining a kind of consciousness inside it. The dream continues around you. The city or the hallway or the room keeps being there, but now you know you are dreaming. You know the walls are not real. You know the people around you are generated by your own brain. And the dream continues anyway. This is called lucid dreaming, and it is not rare. Surveys suggest that a significant portion of people have experienced it at least once. It is reproducible, it can be trained, and it has been studied in lab settings where participants agreed on a signal, a specific eye movement pattern, to use to communicate to researchers from inside a dream, confirming they were simultaneously dreaming and self-aware. The self-awareness inside the dream is real. The awareness that the world is constructed is real. And the constructed world keeps going. Think about that. A person can stand inside a brain-generated environment, know it to be brain-generated, and still experience it as environment. The construction does not collapse under the weight of knowing about the construction. The visual space remains. The emotional tone remains. The sense of being somewhere persists. Why does this matter for waking life? Because we know, intellectually, that perception is constructed. We know about the blind spot. We know about predictive processing. We know that color is a brain-generated property and that the seamless visual field is assembled from incomplete inputs. We can understand all of this clearly. We can be entirely certain it is true. And the construction keeps going. The room keeps being there. The morning keeps feeling real. Knowing about the machinery does not dissolve the experience of the product. This is not a failure of understanding. It is a property of how the brain generates experience. The model is deeper than the knowledge of the model. But the most unsettling bridge between dreams and waking, the one that should stop you for a moment, is not lucid dreaming. It is what is called a false awakening. It happens like this. You are asleep, and something in the brain triggers the experience of waking up. Not actually waking up. Dreaming the experience of waking up with the same fidelity the brain brings to everything else it constructs. You feel yourself return to consciousness. You open your eyes. The room is there. Your actual room, the right room, with the right furniture and the right light and the right sounds. Your memory tells you you were asleep and now you're awake. Your body feels solid. The world feels stable. And then your morning begins. You get up. You move through the routine. Everything holds together. Everything is consistent with reality because your brain is very, very good at constructing consistency. And then something impossible happens. Maybe the clock reads a time that doesn't make sense. Maybe a door opens onto something wrong. Maybe the familiar becomes faintly but unmistakably wrong. And you realize, with a cold certainty, that you are still asleep. That the room you thought you woke up in was generated by the same system that generates all your other dreams. That the memory of falling asleep and the feeling of waking up and the stability of the morning were all constructed. That I woke up was a dream event, built by the brain to simulate the feeling of returning to reality, and it worked so well that you had no idea. Some people report this happening in layers. You wake up, realize you were dreaming, wake up again, realize the waking up was also part of the dream, and then wake up again into something that might be real or might be another layer. Each time, the experience of reality feels as solid and ordinary as it always does. Each time, there is no internal signal that would tell you this is different from any other waking. And this is the question that false awakenings place in front of you and refuse to take back. Not, are we dreaming right now? That's too easy, too cheap, too easy to dismiss. The real question is this: what exactly is feeling awake? What is the experience of waking reality made of? Where does the certainty come from? Because the false awakening has demonstrated that the certainty can be built. The brain can construct the feeling of being awake. It can construct the memory of having been asleep. It can construct the sense of return, the sense of orientation, the sense of this is the real one. It can do all of this from within a dream. So when you feel awake right now, and you do, you feel awake. That feeling is generated by the brain. The same brain that can generate it in a dream. The same brain that runs the same construction process in both states. The feeling is not nothing. The feeling is real. But the feeling is also a product. And the fact that the product feels convincing is not the same as proof that the ground beneath it is fundamentally different from the ground inside a dream. There is another state that fewer people encounter, but that deserves time here because it is one of the clearest examples of the brain's reality machinery becoming briefly visible. Sleep paralysis. You wake up, really wake up this time, or at least partially, but the motor inhibition that keeps your body still during REM sleep has not yet lifted. You are conscious but can't move. And while you are lying there, unable to move, the brain's dream generation system is still active, still producing. And what it produces, in this state of overlap between sleeping and waking, is often experienced as a presence, something in the room, a weight on the chest, a figure standing in the corner or near the door or leaning over you. People across very different cultures, across centuries, have reported this same experience. The incubus of medieval Europe, the old hag of Newfoundland folklore, the kanashibari of Japanese tradition, all describing in culturally specific terms the same neurological event. The brain generating a threat presence, experiencing it as a hallucination in waking space, with the emotional systems fully online and the body paralyzed. What makes sleep paralysis relevant here is not the horror of it, though the horror is real enough. What matters is what it reveals about the architecture of perception. In sleep paralysis, the dream generation system and the waking perception system are running simultaneously, and the border between them is not a wall. It is a threshold, permeable in both directions. The dreamed figure occupies the real room. The real body experiences a dream event. The two states are not cleanly separate mechanisms that switch cleanly between each other. They are modes of the same system, running on a continuum, capable of overlapping, capable of blending. The hypnagogic state, the transition into sleep, and the hypnopompic state, the transition out of it, are both characterized by partial intrusion of dream imagery into waking awareness. Faces appearing in darkness, voices, geometric patterns, the visual and auditory systems generating content that is neither fully asleep nor fully awake. These states are not aberrations. They are the seams showing, the places where the construction is slightly visible. And now, the question becomes personal. more personal than perception, more personal than visual processing. When we talk about the brain constructing reality, we tend to think about the external world, the room, the objects in it, the visual field. But the construction does not stop at the boundary of the skin. The brain also constructs the body. Not in a trivial sense, not in the sense that the brain is aware of the body. In the sense that the body, as you experience it, its location in space, the sense that its parts belong to you, the feeling of inhabiting it from the inside, is itself a model, a construction, an inference the brain makes about where it is and what it has. The rubber hand illusion makes this visible in a way that tends to unsettle people when they actually experience it. A person sits with their real hand hidden from view. In front of them is a rubber hand, positioned as though it were their own. An experimenter strokes both the hidden real hand and the visible rubber hand simultaneously. Within minutes, the person begins to feel the touch on the rubber hand. The brain has incorporated the rubber hand into its body model. The fake hand has become, for the purposes of experience, real. And when the experimenter suddenly strikes the rubber hand with a hammer, the person flinches. Their body responds to a threat to an object they know is not part of them. Because the brain's model said it was. Because the model is what the brain acts on, and the model had been updated, and the update was wrong. Phantom limb phenomena take this further. People who have lost arms or legs often report still feeling them, not as memory, but as presence, as sensation. Pain in fingers that are no longer there, pressure in a foot that no longer exists. The body model persists after the physical reality. It was modeling has changed. The brain keeps the representation of the limb because the representation is the experience, and representations do not simply switch off when the referent is removed. This is what it means to say that the self is modeled. Not that the self is fake, not that you don't exist, but that the sense of existing, the sense of having a body, of being located in space, of inhabiting a particular form, is assembled by the brain and presented to consciousness. And like all of the brain's constructions, it can be wrong. It can be altered. It can be interrupted. Out-of-body experiences, carefully considered, belong in this category. During certain conditions, illness, near-death events, specific drug states, extreme meditation, occasional spontaneous occurrences, the brain's model of where the self is located can become decoupled from the normal position inside the body. People report observing themselves from outside, from above, from across the room. The self, which the brain models as positioned behind the eyes and inside the skull, seems to move to a different location. The self location is not hardwired. It is a prediction. It can be altered. And if the location of the self is something the brain models, it is reasonable to ask what other aspects of the self are also modeled. The continuity of identity through time. The sense of being the same person who woke up this morning and who went to sleep last night. The feeling that the narrative of your life belongs to you and has coherence. These two depend on brain processes. These two are constructions. The dream version of you is also a self. It has a body, a location, a history, emotions, responses. It navigates its world. It is afraid or hopeful or confused. It is from the inside, fully inhabited. And it is entirely generated. The waking version of you is also generated. Constrained differently, corrected differently, more stable and more consistent, but generated. Time deserves particular attention here, because it is one of the places where the parallel between dreaming and waking reality is most revealing. In a dream, time does not follow rules. Events from childhood and adulthood occur simultaneously. An entire narrative that should take days unfolds in what feels like minutes, or a moment of dream time stretches to contain what seems like hours. Chronology becomes elastic. The past can appear in the same space as the future. A person who died 30 years ago walks through a room as though the present has folded over on itself. And yet none of this feels disjointed while the dream is happening. The dream has its own temporal logic, its own sense of sequence. The brain presents the time-distorted experience as coherent from the inside. Now consider what we know about waking time perception. Time, as you experience it, is not a simple clock. It is a construction dependent on attention, emotion, memory, expectation, and bodily state. When you are absorbed in something, an hour feels like minutes. When you are waiting anxiously, a minute feels like much longer. When you are terrified, perception can shift into a hyper-detailed mode where events seem to slow, giving the brain more processing time per moment. When you are under general anesthesia, time disappears entirely. Not fast-forwarded, but gone. No subjective experience of duration at all. The feeling that time is flowing at a consistent rate, that the last hour was about as long as the hour before it, is the brain applying a model of temporal regularity to a process that is actually deeply variable. You experience time through the construction, not directly. And memory, which is what creates the sense of continuity through time, the sense of being the same person across years, is not a recording. This is something memory research has demonstrated repeatedly and carefully. Every time you recall a memory, you are not retrieving a stored file. You are reconstructing the memory, each time, from available fragments. And each reconstruction is slightly influenced by your current state, your current knowledge, your current emotional context. The memory is rebuilt each time it is accessed, and because it is rebuilt, it is subject to change, to influence, to error. The past, as you experience it, is not fixed. It is a living construction that exists in the present. This does not mean your memories are unreliable in every detail or that the past didn't happen. It means the access you have to the past is mediated by the same constructive process that mediates your access to everything else. The world outside you, the body inside you, the self that inhabits both. All of it arrives through construction. There is a version of this conversation that turns, at this point, into something about simulation, about the universe being a computer program, about consciousness creating reality, about quantum physics dissolving the boundary between mind and matter. And I want to be clear about something. That is not where this video is going. Not because those ideas are all stupid. Some of them are worth thinking about carefully, but because they skip over something more immediate and more certain. Before we ask whether the universe itself is a simulation running on some kind of deeper substrate, we have to deal with the fact that the only universe we ever experience is already processed, filtered, constructed, and modeled by the brain. The most obvious simulation in the picture is not on a server somewhere. It is biological. It is neurological. It is happening behind your eyes right now. You will never encounter the world directly. You will only ever encounter the brain's model of it. That is not a technological question or a speculative one. That is the finding of contemporary neuroscience, expressed carefully. The external world presumably exists. Physics presumably works. Other people presumably exist and share access to some consistent underlying reality. We have very good evidence for all of that, and science depends on it. But your experience of that world, the redness of a red apple, the solidity of the table, the sound of a voice, the feeling of weight, the sense of presence, none of that arrives directly. It is all assembled. The simulation that matters is not hypothetical. It is the one that has been running your entire life, so perfectly that you have never once suspected it was there. This is where hallucinations become relevant. Not as evidence of madness, not as curiosities, but as diagnostic windows into the prediction machinery. When the brain's predictive system generates strong predictions about what should be present, and those predictions are not corrected by incoming sensory data, either because the incoming data is absent or because the prediction correction mechanism is disrupted, the prediction can become experienced without external referent. The brain generates the thing it expects to be there, and the thing shows up in perception as though it were actually there. This can happen across a wide range of conditions. Extreme sleep deprivation, severe sensory deprivation, high fever, specific medications, neurological changes. The exact mechanisms vary, but what remains consistent is the basic structure. The prediction is strong enough and uncorrected enough to manifest as perception. People who hear voices are not necessarily generating random noise. In many cases, the voices have characteristics that reflect the person's own internal states, their fears, their self-criticism, their expectations of threat or judgment. The prediction machinery is generating content, and that content is arriving in consciousness with the same quality of externality that characterizes any other perception. This is worth sitting with. A voice you hear because it is actually there, and a voice your brain generates in the absence of a real source feels similar from the inside. Both arrive in consciousness as external events. Both are registered as real by the systems that generate experience. The difference is not in the quality of the experience. The difference is in whether the experience is anchored to something outside the brain. Waking perception is anchored. Dreaming is not. Hallucination is the machinery producing content with anchoring impaired. All three involve the same underlying construction process, running at different levels of constraint. That is not a comforting thought, but it is an accurate one. There is another interruption of experience that brings this into very sharp relief. General anesthesia. When you go under general anesthesia, consciousness stops. Not sleep, not REM, not dreaming, not the partial consciousness of light sleep. Consciousness stops. The world disappears. You do not experience darkness. You do not experience waiting. You do not experience anything, because there is no subjective experience occurring. And then consciousness comes back. The world returns. The room is different. It's the recovery room, not the operating theatre, but the world is there, reassembled, populated with sound and sensation and the tired weight of your body. You are back. What happened in between, as far as experience is concerned, is nothing. Not a short nothing, not a compressed nothing, genuinely nothing. Hours of activity occurring in the physical world, surgery, time passing, other people moving around, and zero experience of any of it. This is one of the starkest demonstrations of something that is easy to forget. Reality, as you experience it, requires the construction to be running. The external world doesn't stop. The surgery doesn't stop. But the experienced world stops completely. Because the brain is not generating the experience. The world you know, the world you wake up inside each morning, exists as experience only when the brain is producing it. Which does not mean the world stops existing when you sleep. It means your version of the world, the inhabited, experienced, perceived version, is contingent on the construction. When the construction resumes, reality comes back online. Your version of it. The model restarts. And this raises a question that does not have a comfortable answer. When you say the world, which world do you mean? The physical substrate, the matter, the energy, the space, the fields, which presumably continues whether or not anyone is experiencing it. Or the world as experienced, the one with color and sound and weight and presence and the particular quality of afternoon light that makes some rooms feel like they're from a different year. That second world, the only world you have ever actually lived in, requires the brain to be running the model. It is not received, it is produced, and it can stop. I want to be precise about something, because this is the place where it's easiest to go wrong. I'm not saying that reality is fake. I'm not saying the external world doesn't exist, or that physics is an illusion, or that other people are products of your imagination. The constructivist account of perception does not imply solipsism, and it doesn't imply that we should stop trusting our senses or abandon the scientific enterprise. What neuroscience is saying is more nuanced and, in some ways, stranger. The external world exists and exerts real constraints on the brain's model. Sensory prediction errors, the moments when reality fails to match the brain's expectation, force the model to update, and the accumulation of those updates over time produces a model that tracks the actual structure of the physical world with considerable fidelity. That is why science works. That is why engineering works. That is why the spacecraft gets to where it is aimed, and the medication does what the trial showed it would do. The model is constrained by reality. It is not identical to reality. The distinction is this: a map can be accurate without being the territory. A very good map, made by careful people over many years, corrected again and again by the experience of walking the actual terrain, will take you where you want to go. But the map is not the landscape. The map is the brain's construction. The landscape is what the map is constructed from. You have access to the map. You have always had access only to the map. The map is extraordinarily good. It has allowed our species to understand the structure of atoms and the curvature of space-time and the sequence of our own genomes. It is a product of stunning refinement and reliability. But every face you have ever loved, you loved through the map. Every room you have ever stood in, you stood in through the map. Every second of your life, every experience you have ever had, every memory you carry, everything you know as reality, all of it arrived through the construction, through the model, through the brain's best version of what is out there. And the brain builds that same model in sleep, with different inputs, with different correction, with less constraint, but the same process. Waking reality is not a dream, but it is the same kind of thing. A model, a construction. The difference is that this one is tethered to something external, and that tether makes it consistent, stable, shared, and testable. But you never get the external thing directly. You only ever get the construction. I remember a while ago, waking from a dream in which I had been somewhere else for what felt like a long time. A building that made no architectural sense, filled with people from different years of my life, all present at once as though time had folded over. When I opened my eyes and the room came back, I held still for a second. Not out of confusion, exactly. More out of a kind of involuntary awareness that both states had felt, while I was in them, completely real, completely inhabited. And the room, once it was fully there, felt the way it always feels. Solid, certain. The right place, the right time, the right version of being awake. But the dream had felt like that too. Until it didn't. I don't tell that as a ghost story. I tell it because it's a very ordinary experience, the kind almost everyone has had at some point, and it points at something that we spend most of our lives not looking at directly. The certainty of waking reality is not external to the brain. It is produced by the brain. It is one of the things the construction includes. Along with color and sound and solidity and time, the brain also generates the feeling that this is real, the feeling that this is not a dream, the feeling that the world around you is the actual world and not a model of it. And the brain can generate that feeling in a dream. Not always, not perfectly. The false awakening eventually breaks. Something goes wrong, some inconsistency exceeds the model's ability to smooth it over, and the dreamer realizes. But for a while, for the duration of the dream waking, however long the dream brain sustains it, the feeling is present and complete. The feeling of reality is a feature that the construction generates. It is not a window that opens onto something behind the construction. There is a way of thinking about this that does not collapse into despair. A way that is honest without being nihilistic. The brain's model of reality is not arbitrary. It is not a fantasy. It is the product of hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary pressure toward accuracy, toward building a model that tracks the structure of the world well enough to survive, navigate, cooperate, and understand. The model has been refined by experience, corrected by error, tested against shared reality, and cross-referenced with the models that other brains have built. It is genuinely reliable in most of the ways that matter for a living creature. But reliability is not the same as directness. A reliable map is still a map. And the question that stays with me, the one I keep returning to, is not whether reality is real. It probably is. There is presumably something outside the brain that the model is tracking. There is presumably a physical world that constrains the construction and provides the raw material for it. The question is what you actually have access to, what the contents of your conscious experience actually are, what the world you live in actually is, and the answer seems to be a model. A very good one that you can trust for most purposes, one that science has carefully extended and corrected and mapped, but a model nonetheless. The construction never stops. The brain never switches into a mode of direct access. There is no moment in a waking day or a dreaming night when the machinery turns off and you just receive reality as it is. The machinery is always running. The construction is always present. The model is what you get. Think about what that means for a moment. Not as a philosophical thought experiment, as a description of your actual life. Every person you have ever known, their face, their voice, the quality of their presence when they were in a room, you knew them through a construction. The brain modeled their face from the light patterns that reflected off it. It modeled their voice from the air pressure variations that reached your ear. It built a representation of their personality, their emotional states, their likely intentions, from thousands of tiny signals filtered through expectation and memory, and the brain's existing model of how people work. You loved people through a model. You were afraid of things through a model. You laughed and grieved and sat in silence and felt the specific quality of certain afternoons through a model. Every second of your experience, every memory in your archive, every moment of connection or loneliness or wonder, all of it was mediated. This is not a tragedy. This is not a reason to doubt the reality of love or grief or the experience of being alive. Those things are real. The model is real. The experience it generates is genuinely experienced. But the world you live in is not the world itself. It is the world as the brain renders it for you, updated by evidence, stabilized by consistency, anchored to something external that you will never directly touch. And the brain that renders your waking world is the same brain that built last night's dream. The same process. The same engine. Running with different inputs, under different constraints, with different levels of correction. But the same fundamental act. The construction of experience from prediction. I said at the beginning that the terrifying thing is not that dreams feel real. The terrifying thing is that reality feels real for the same reason. Let me say what I mean by that now. As precisely as I can. Dreams feel real because the brain's reality generation machinery is running. The visual system generates space. The emotional system generates significance. The memory systems generate context and continuity. The self-modeling systems generate the sense of being someone, located somewhere, experiencing events. All of this running at full capacity with the correction mechanism reduced. Waking reality feels real for the same reasons, plus one additional one. The model is being continuously corrected by sensory input from a consistent external world. That correction makes the model stable. It makes it shared. It makes it testable and reliable and consistent in a way that dreams are not. But the feeling of reality itself, the quality of realness that waking experience has, is not the same thing as that correction. The feeling of reality is generated. It is part of the construction. The correction constrains the model. The feeling of reality is a product of the model, which means the feeling of reality is not proof of direct access. It is evidence that the model is running stably. It is the brain's report on its own confidence in its current construction. It is, in a very specific sense, a feature of the system. And the system can generate it even when the underlying situation does not warrant it. In a false awakening. In a sufficiently vivid dream. In certain dissociative states. In the confident perception of an optical illusion that you cannot stop seeing even after you know it is wrong. The feeling of realness is not a reliable indicator of a special category of experience called reality that is fundamentally different from other experience. It is the brain reporting that the model is stable. When the model is very stable, when everything is consistent, when prediction errors are low, when memory and sensation and expectation all align, the feeling of realness is strong. When the model is less stable, in the edge states, in the boundary conditions, in the moments right after waking, It fluctuates. What you trust as the ground beneath your experience is the brain's ongoing assessment of its own model's coherence. There is one last thing worth saying. The brain builds worlds. It has always built worlds. It builds them at night with the sensory doors closed, and it builds them during the day with sensory input flowing in to keep the construction anchored. The engine never stops. The construction never pauses. Not during sleep, not during dreams, not during the moments of clearest waking consciousness. You are never outside the construction. You are always inside the model. This is not a failure of human perception. It is the nature of consciousness as far as we can currently understand it. You are a process that generates experience from signals, and the experience is what you have, and the experience is genuinely yours, and it is genuinely real in the way that experience is real. But it is not the world. It is the model of the world. And the model is built by a brain that knows, deeply and below the level of language, how to make a world feel like reality. It learned this before you were born. It refined it in every moment of your infancy. Every correction from a mismatch between expectation and sensation, every time the model failed and had to update. By the time you were old enough to form memories, the construction was already seamless. By the time you could ask questions about it, it had been running your experienced life for years. The dream ends because sensory input returns and forces the model back into alignment with the external world. The dream ends because the correction mechanism comes back online and starts pruning the model's wilder predictions. The dream ends because the brain receives enough contradiction to abandon the dream world and rebuild the waking one. But the model does not end. The construction does not end. The brain never switches into a mode where reality is simply received rather than built. You wake up, and the building continues. I sometimes think about the moment I mentioned earlier, the few seconds after a vivid dream, before the waking world has fully asserted itself, when both feel possible. I think about it not as something to be explained away, but as something that shows you a seam. Most of the time, the construction is invisible. It is supposed to be invisible. An animal that was aware of the construction at every moment, that experienced the machinery rather than the product, would be unable to function. The model has to be transparent to be useful. The world has to feel like a window, rather than a painting for you to navigate it. But the seam is there. The edge cases show it. The false awakenings show it. The rubber hand shows it. The blind spot filled in with invented visual information shows it. The hallucination that feels indistinguishable from perception shows it. The dream that you grieve when you wake up, mourning people who never existed, shows it. The brain builds your world every day. It has always been building it. And it is very, very good at making what it builds feel like the only thing there could be. That is not nothing. That is, in a strange way, one of the most remarkable things about being alive. That you are a process capable of generating experience, capable of building something as vast and detailed and inhabited as a human life, from signals and predictions and the quiet continuous work of a 3-pound organ that never asked to be noticed. But it is also this, the world you call real, the only world you have ever known, the world that contains everyone you love and everything you fear and every moment you have ever lived. That world arrives to you already processed, already constructed, already modeled and assembled and handed to consciousness by a brain that is doing something you can never fully watch from the inside. And tomorrow morning, when your eyes open and the room returns, when the ceiling is there and the light is there and the familiar weight of the day is there, before the construction becomes invisible again, before the model becomes the world again, there is a question worth asking in that window of transition. Did reality come back? Or did the brain simply start building the most stable version of it again? The one corrected by sensory input, anchored to the external world, consistent enough to be called real. And is that the only reality you have ever had access to? The dream ends, the model continues, and the engine never stopped.